What is up, guys? Welcome to the LBank Show. I'm your host, Mohan. Today with us, we are having an amazing guest. And you did see the announcement on our Twitter for episode 10. We prepared Polkadot. Polkadot is a blockchain platform and cryptocurrency. The Polkadot native cryptocurrency is DOT. The Polkadot was created and designed to allow blockchains to exchange messages and perform transactions with each other without trusted third party. The protocol was created by Ethereum co-founder Gavin Wood. Bill Laboon is our speaker today. He is the head of education and grants at Web3 Foundation. Before this, he was a lecturer in the computer science department of University of Pittsburgh. He's also a frequent speaker at conferences. He's also an author of two books. The first one is a friendly introduction to software testing, and the second one is Strength in Numbers. So see it for yourself and learn more from Bill about Polkadot. Hey, Bill, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Definitely. Welcome to the LBank Show once again. We're very honored to have you on as a head of the education at Polkadot and Web3 Foundation. So, Bill, we hope we will educate our users today about more about Polkadot and blockchain, what you guys do, and what is next to come to Polkadot. We will have three parts of today's show. The first part will be free chat. The second part will be the question that we prepared for you, and the third part will be closing part. So, are you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Definitely, I am. So, the golden question that I have here for you is, what has been on your mind recently, Bill?
Wow, so much has been on my mind. So I've actually been very, very excited and very interested to see what has been happening just in the world of blockchain in general and Polkadot specifically. I know that my focus is on the world of Polkadot, but we all know what's happening in the various decentralized worlds, and we've probably seen a little bit less interest in blockchain technology over the last few years. But what I've been really excited to see and been very interested in is just the amount of the number of projects that have been trying out new things, and we're seeing a lot of really interesting technology happen and be developed. We're seeing a lot of blockchain projects sort of figure out how things work, right? And sometimes when there's a lot of excitement around crypto, there's not as much time and not as much focus on these things, and people aren't willing to try new things. And we're really seeing, I think, this year, like a lot of really interesting attempts at trying new things and trying to use crypto for new things.
Definitely. I mean, you guys been building in the bear market for sure. We can see so many news on the Polkadot Twitter. So kudos to you guys. What I want to ask, how did you get in the crypto, in the Web3 in general?
Yeah, so I am probably the only person who got interested in crypto because I was interested in hash functions. So actually, a long time ago, I was working as a software developer and doing some analysis for various hash functions for a project. And somebody said, "Hey, there's this new thing called Bitcoin, and it really uses, it uses SHA-256, and I know you've been looking into that." So so I looked into it from there. Was very interested. This was back really in 2011, and then in 2012, I really dived down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and got very involved. Started running my own node, and it was always sort of something interesting. Really, when Ethereum came out, and you could had Turing complete smart contracts and could really program new things on top of blockchains. That's when I got really excited. About this world, started moving into it. I was teaching computer science at the time at University of Pittsburgh. Eventually started teaching courses in blockchain at the university. And I actually saw, so Gavin Wood, one of the founders of Polkadot, he gave a talk at Web3 Summit 2018 about Substrate, which is the Polkadot software development kit that we use, the development framework for building blockchains. And I was just amazed, and I said, all right, I want to be a part of this. I actually I applied to work at Web3 Foundation. I and my family moved from the United States to Switzerland so that I could be here and be part of the Crypto Valley. in 2019, and I have been here and been working with Polkadot ever since.
It been since then. So you've been in the industry for such a long time, and there's not so many people in it. I mean, most of us guys we came in 2017. So and you came in 2012. So that's talking about how much experience you have, and you've seen a lot of things in the crypto industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it's evolved so much. I'm always shocked, right, at just how things have evolved and how I thought things would evolve. It's nothing ever matches exactly what you're thinking of. So it's been very exciting to see the industry grow up.
I have a few questions prepared for you, and one of the question is, can you walk us through the about the history of Polkadot and what is the main goal of you guys that you have?
Yeah, sure. So Gavin Wood, who was one of the founders of Polkadot, and now the chief architect at Parity, and really a lot of the brains, part of the brains behind Polkadot, was formerly the CTO of Ethereum. He was one of the founders of Ethereum. However, as Ethereum developed and really started to become a like a major product in its own right, Gavin saw that there were a lot of issues that Ethereum would face. Many of which we saw, right, in terms of scalability, right, in terms of prices for transactions, things like this. The limitations of the EVM, of the Ethereum virtual machine, and so he came up with this idea for Polkadot, what's now called Polkadot, which is essentially in its entire blockchain ecosystem. The idea of Polkadot is that there is not just one size that fits all. There's no one blockchain that's going to be good for everything. As a former software engineering professor, something I always told my students, right? Everything in software is trade-offs. You may have, so just let's take like Bitcoin and Ethereum for instance, right? One is proof of work and one is proof of stake, and there are benefits to proof of work. There are benefits to proof of stake. There are benefits to having Turing complete smart contracts. There are benefits to having like a very simple smart, not Bitcoin language, right? A script, right? Like that doesn't have, it's not Turing complete. You can't do a lot with it, but it also means that things can be more efficient, right? You have an account-based model on Ethereum versus a UTXO-based model on Bitcoin. All of these things are technical decisions that have like very real world impacts, right, on what you can do with them, what they do, what their benefits are, what their trade-offs, what the bad things are about them. And so what Gav saw is that different teams, different projects, were going to want to make different trade-offs. So the idea of Polkadot is to solve first that scalability issue, right? So by having the ability for lots of different blockchains to have a sharded blockchain, we call heterogeneously sharded, that we have different blockchains all running in the same ecosystem, but can still share security and communicate with each other. And people can develop their own blockchains that have the particular functionalities that they want. So we actually have a substrate, as I mentioned before, which is I like to think of it as like a Ruby on Rails for blockchains, where individual teams can build their own blockchains, have them be a part of the Polkadot ecosystem, communicate with other parachains, as we call them, other blockchains in the Polkadot ecosystem, send assets from one to another, so, like send tokens, have a smart contract on chain A, call a smart contract on chain B, interact with each other in all kinds of different ways. And so you have a whole ecosystem, an internet of blockchains, right? As opposed to saying like, well, this particular blockchain is the way you have to do it. You have to use the EVM, or you have to use our particular smart contract programming language, right? Different teams are going to want to make different trade-offs. So Polkadot really is a bet against blockchain maximalism, that the world is not going to belong to a single blockchain, but rather provide a way for all kinds of different teams to build, but have them not be siloed, have them interact with each other and talk with each other and communicate with each other, and all be secured under the same security guarantees.
You did talk us and walk us through to the Polkadot history, and you did touch on the theme how you guys different yourself from the other blockchain. But I want to know more about how does the Polkadot differentiate itself from the other blockchains that we have in the industry, and we have many of them?
Yeah, so I think in a couple of ways. So one way that I think mattered more in the past, we have a very advanced proof of stake system called nominated proof of stake. This is starting to become like table stakes in the ecosystem. There are fewer and fewer proof of work or other chains out there, although I know there are other types of chains and other types of consensus mechanisms and Sybil resistance mechanisms. We actually have, what I think a very well-designed nominated proof of stake mechanism that provides a very secure blockchain ecosystem. I think the on-chain governance is another huge difference. So we actually have real democratic on-chain governance. There are no accounts that are special. And even when an upgrade has to occurs, this can be voted on or proposed by anyone in the ecosystem, and it has to be approved by people in the ecosystem before it occurs. So voting on Polkadot is not just like a poll that we can show the developers, like, hey, this is what people think in the ecosystem. It's actually an integral part, right? The developers, when they want to make a change to Polkadot, have to put it up on chain, and it will be voted on by all dot holders. And if it passes, then it will automatically be enacted. Nobody can stop it. And if it's not passed, well, then it doesn't pass, right? It doesn't occur. No, the developers don't have any control over it. And we've actually seen this. We have what we call a canary network called Kusama, which is where we try out new features before sending them to Polkadot. And we've actually seen in the past where the community has said, this was too quick of a change. We need more time to test. So we've actually had developers, submit an update and have it voted down by the community. So this really is, a very decentralized network. And finally, the big difference, I think, and this is really a developer-focused message, but Polkadot allows you to develop at all levels. So if you're interested in just using a blockchain or one of the parachains, we have 48 different parachains, these different blockchains in the Polkadot ecosystem right now. You can use it as an ordinary user, right? If you want to build a smart contract, many of these parachains support smart contracts in actually several different languages. You even could just use your Solidity code that you're used to in Ethereum and use it. You could use Ink, which is a Rust-based domain-specific language that we use in the Polkadot ecosystem. You could anything that compiles down to WebAssembly, actually, you could use as your smart contract programming language. Or you can decide that you want to make your own parachain. You want to have control over things at a very low level, right? If you want to make your own chain that has its own smart contract programming language or has additional features, right? Maybe identity services or its own form of governance or its own sub-consensus mechanism. There are all kinds of different things that we've seen where we have chains both trying new things technologically and also chains that are app specific, right? Like that a particular DeFi app that can run entirely on one chain. We have all kinds of interesting approaches to that, like removing or minimizing MEV, for instance, is one chain in our ecosystem does. Or whatever, really, like the limitations aren't there. So if you want like the sort of the safety and ease of use of developing a smart contract, you can do that. Or you can like dig further down. You can make a chain and grab what we call palettes, essentially libraries from other chains, and put them together and make your own chain, or even code at a very low level and make your own features that do things that only your blockchain can do.
So every developer listening to this, I mean, you did hear the bill. Head out to Polkadot, and there's no limitation for you guys, for sure. So, what are the key components of Polkadot's architecture, and how do they work together?
Yeah, so great question. So there are really two major parts, right? So the first is the relay chain. The relay chain is the main chain of Polkadot. You can think of it as kind of like the beacon chain on Ethereum, if you understand the current Ethereum mechanism. And the relay chain actually provides security and support for all of the different parachains. So you can think of it as like an Ethereum chain that's focused just on providing support to other things. So you can't run a smart contract on the relay chain. The focus of the relay chain is supporting these parachains. So these parachains are it's short for parallelized blockchains. So you can think of them as kind of like decentralized L2s. So these are chains that can be developed from scratch, right? Using Substrate, or even if you want to do it entirely from scratch, you can. And essentially, what happens when a relay chain, when a parachain wants to connect to the relay chain, it can put its code on the relay chain, right? And so the various validators, and there are 297 right now validators on the relay chain. The eventual goal is to get that up to 1,000. The code for this and the blocks that you are produced are verified, right? So instead of having some sort of centralized sequencer like you see on most L2s or its own mechanism, the whole chain is meant to be a decentralized way of allowing these other shards, these parachains, to operate. So this allows for incredible efficiency. As I've said, we have 48 different parachains, each of which can handle, again, transactions per second is a difficult thing to measure precisely and define precisely, but hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions per second, on each of these chains, all of which can interact and be secured by this relay chain. So what you have is this ecosystem where an address, an account that you have on any one of these parachains can generally be used on another parachain. You can send tokens, assets, call through each other. But from the end user perspective, right, a lot of this stuff is going to appear pretty seamless, right? That you can have different chains interacting with each other, moving from chain to chain and using the same address, using the same extension. So you get a lot of the benefits, right, of like a very multi-chain ecosystem, but you also have the benefits of using a single account, right, and a single piece of software for or wallet for all of your assets and all of your interactions on these different chains.
Thank you, Bill, for that one. And speaking of parachains, can you explain the role of parachains and parathreads that we have in the Polkadot network? And what is the relay chain and how does it function within the Polkadot ecosystem? You did mention a couple of times, but can we broaden that question and answer?
Sure. Yeah. So the relay chain is a nominated proof of stake chain, right? Like the centralized chain that consists of validators that are elected into the active set. And then right now, what you have are these parachains. You have like a long period of time where a chain can have a slot, as we call it, a lease to a slot actually on the relay chain. So on Polkadot, this is about 2 years long. So however, what we have seen is actually, there are some projects that don't need to have this, this long of a period. And so these parachains, these individual blockchains that are being secured by the relay chain, or will soon have the capability to be what we call on-demand parachains. You mentioned parathreads. This is sort of an older form of the same term. We're currently changing into on-demand parachains. But the idea is you may have a chain that doesn't need to stay connected to the relay chain at all times. So you can imagine, for instance, a chain like Bitcoin, or even like a bridge to Bitcoin. Bitcoin only makes blocks every 10 minutes on average, whereas Polkadot, the relay chain, makes a block every 6 seconds. So if you're running a bridge to the Bitcoin chain, you probably don't need to have this is what, like 100 times as many blocks or 60 times as many blocks as the Bitcoin chain itself is producing. So what you can do is have this on-demand parachain that only connect to the relay chain, and this will be a bit won't require as many resources, won't require as much dot for you to have access to this for the amount of time that you need it. Or even like smaller projects. So you may want to try something for a month, and you let everyone know, like, look, we're trying this blockchain. We don't, we'll see how it works. We'll continue if people use it. Otherwise, we won't continue using it. Or you may have essentially like a smart contract that wants to have some of the benefits of being a parachain, and you actually can sort of run this hybrid model of a smart contract running on on Polkadot, like directly on Polkadot, even if not on the relay chain. So this all goes back to the idea that Polkadot really wants to give power to the developers, right? And there are a lot of different things that developers have told us that they want to do that just aren't possible in a lot of blockchains, right? Because I think that many blockchain ecosystems, the idea is, here is what our ecosystem provides. You can build on top of it. And I think a key part of the philosophy of Polkadot is figuring out, what do developers want to do and how can we give that to them? So, if you want to have a parachain that doesn't produce blocks quite as often, right? For one reason or another. If you want to have a parachain that uses a different smart contract programming language, that has I want to create a bill chain, and I have super user power over every account, right? I don't know what or even things like feeless parachains, right? You can have a parachain that you use some other mechanism, right, instead of fees. We've talked about, like proof of work parachains, or like proof of authority chains that people can use and not pay fees on, or that you do a bit of a proof of work for every transaction. These are things using tokens from other chains as gas for your chain. All of these are possible cool ideas that you can't do on a lot of blockchain ecosystems, right? Because like if you want to do something on Ethereum, for instance, you need ETH, right? You need to pay ETH for the transaction fees, even if there are other tokens or things on top of it. But with parachains, you have the capability to do other things and try these other mechanisms out. And so a big push for us in Polkadot has been to provide these options, right? Allow developers to really let their imaginations run wild and try different things. And we've seen, really, like I said at the beginning, a lot of interesting experiments in this direction already.
What is the role of validators in Polkadot network, and how are they selected?
Yeah, great question. So validators are the block producers and parachain validators on Polkadot, on the relay chain. So they are doing several things. One, a random subset of the validators is always selected to verify different parachains, right? So remember how a parachain works is, when they first come on board, they essentially tell the validators, yeah, here are the rules that I will follow for producing blocks. Those parachains have their own validator-like nodes called collators. Those collators essentially send potential blocks to the relay chain and allow the relay chain, some random subset of these validators to to verify according to the rules of that blockchain. This is a valid next block. Okay, so this is the one thing that the validators do. The second thing is they're also ensuring security of the chain. They're checking on each other. They're ensuring that other validators are not producing bad blocks, or that the parachains they're validating them correctly. Okay, so that's a very important role. And as I said, there are 297 of them. This number will probably go up in the near future, and our eventual goal is 1,000. We have 1,000 running already on Kusama. So how they're selected is basically by election. So if there are two roles that are relevant here. There are validators, which are like the actual accounts running the validator nodes, and there are nominators. So nominators can put up dot for essentially behind, essentially elect, right? They can elect their dot to be put behind to stake these validators. Because right now, to get into the active set, to be a block producer on Polkadot, you have to be one of those top 297 in terms of getting dot behind you. And the average right now is actually a little over 2.2 million dot per validator. So that's quite a bit of dot. Not a lot of people have it sitting in their pockets. So they rely on these nominators to also put up their dot behind validators that they trust. So you can imagine Now, as a nominator yourself, you are vulnerable to being slashed if that validator does something bad. So you need to analyze, and trust that validator. But in return, you get staking rewards from doing so. So what we see is most validators, except for those that are run by private entities like exchanges, but most validators have hundreds of these nominating accounts, hundreds of these nominators that are electing them to be in the active set with their dot, right? Saying, hey, I trust this particular validator. So you ask, well, how do I know, right? That this validator is good. So we actually have on the Polkadot wiki, which I'm very proud of. If you're ever interested in learning something about Polkadot, we have hundreds and hundreds of pages that we've been writing since 2019. Since I came here, I have the first commit on the Polkadot wiki years ago. You can look up, like, we have a page on, like, what are things to look for. So things like the past performance of that validator. Are they putting up their own dot? Right, that they trust themselves. You can see, if I see a node that has put up one dot behind themselves, and I see one that's put up 20,000 dot, well, I'm going to trust that one with 20,000 dot more. They have a lot more skin in the game, right? And you can see some other things. For instance, in terms of decentralization, there's actually some benefits in terms of slashing protection, but for nominating validators that are not part of a larger set, right? So this is how we try to go against just large whales having 95% of all validators out there. We've really focused on decentralizing validators, and there are some benefits, especially in terms of reduced slash amounts for nominating validators that are running on their own, like independent validators. We also have the 1,000 Validators program. So Web3 Foundation actually puts up our own dot to nominate individual validators, and you can sign up for that. We help teach people how to run a good node and ensure that you don't get slashed, and how to attract nominators. So this has been something that's having a truly decentralized system is really key to Polkadot, both like philosophically and technologically. It's something we've really tried to do, and we really push for, because we don't want to have like the equivalent of some L2 with a single entity that can censor transactions, right? We want to spread things out as much as possible, spread the validator set out as much as possible, have as many people participate as we feasibly can.
Bill, thank you for that one too. And what I usually like to ask my guests is, how would you describe your community? And we know the community is key to every project in this industry.
Yeah, so we have. I like to think of Polkadot as we're the nerds, right? And maybe it's just the type of people I hang out in with the community, but we are very much a developer heavy and technologically focused group. So I think this is it's a really fun thing for me. Because again, our focus has always been on providing like a playground for developers, right? And I think this is, if I can say something a little bit negative about Polkadot, I think there is kind of a stereotype, right, that about Polkadot being extremely complex and hard to understand. But I do think also that the community is very willing to help. We have and help understand, and a lot of this complexity is because our goal really is to give developers as much power and flexibility as they can. So I just think of when I was a kid and I had the basic 4-function calculator, like plus, minus, divide, times, right? Very, very easy to understand. And then I think, when I was in college, and again, I know I'm a nerd, I had my HP 48GX calculator, a scientific calculator that had more RAM than my first computer, and could do, differential equations and stuff on it. And it was more complicated, right? But it also was much more powerful. And so I feel like the end user, hopefully, right? If you're using the application, right, a lot of that complexity should be smoothed away by the developer. But I feel like the people that are interested in Polkadot right now, it's a very nerdy community, but it's also very passionate. right? I think, like I said, the whole reason I came here is like I saw a demonstration of substrate, and I was like, wow, like, this, it blew my mind, right? That a blockchain could do something like this. And I immediately thought of like 10 things that I wanted to try with it. And so you see a lot of like really passionate people who have similar stories to me. That they saw the technical limitations of things like the EVM, or other blockchains, and they said, "Wow, like Polkadot really removes a lot of these limitations, right? It provides you like as a developer like this, just unlimited like candy land of all kinds of things you can try." And so, yeah, I would say like a very very passionate, very technical community is how I would describe Polkadot's community.
Shout out to Polka fam.
Yeah.
Definitely. And what is the roadmap of Polkadot developments for the next couple of years, if we can touch on those?
Yeah, sure. So so Polkadot already has changed pretty dramatically from the original vision in 2016. Maybe dramatically is too strong of a term, but I actually did a talk on 2 years ago about what has changed since the original Polkadot paper, the white paper in 2016. And so we've seen things like governance changing and our staking system change already. Making changes. Actually, we have forkless upgrades on Polkadot. We've actually upgraded without any hard forks 47 or 48 times already. It's very easy since the WebAssembly code is actually stored on the blockchain, so you can just sort of just put in new WebAssembly code and vote that in, and then boom, you've got new features on your blockchain. So we've seen a lot of upgrades. Um, and we're continuing that. So we just announced sort of some ideas like a potential the potential future of Polkadot. And again, all of this is predicated on the community deciding that, right? There is no single person or single entity deciding, right? Like here's what's going to happen. But so I already mentioned, but here are some ideas, right, of things that we've looked at. So one are these on-demand parachains, right? So basically more flexible scheduling, we call agile scheduling, uh, of parachains, the ability to get a block space, on a per block basis, changing these like long leases away. We have looked at actually changing some of the like the treasury model and like the staking rewards model of Polkadot. We have had a lot of other changes in terms of like increasing the power of what we call proxies, which are similar to account abstraction in Ethereum. That's something we've actually had in Polkadot for a long time, this idea of account abstraction, where you can have accounts that have certain powers and not others. And this is something that we've been looking to improve upon and add new features and change and simplify, make it easier for the end user. But I would say really like this idea, moving to core time, realizing that sort of a higher abstraction level, right? Parachains are just like executing something on the relay chain, right? It's really just executing some code. And so really like changing the abstraction model to executing all kinds of things. So not just on-demand parachains, as we just mentioned, although I think this will be a big thing, but also, like very like, individualized smart contracts, or things that we're perhaps not even haven't even thought of yet, right? But providing this just general abstraction of, hey, I have some code that I want to run trustlessly by a decentralized network, right? And you'll be totally unstoppable. There are all kinds of things besides blockchains that might want that, right? Like blockchains are a very important thing, but there's you can think of like like DAGs, directed acyclic graphs, individual smart contracts, all kinds of things that we can have running, sharing the security of Polkadot, not having to worry about their own security, being able to use the Polkadot SDK substrate to develop these, and do all of this stuff without having to worry about like low lying networking issues and things like that, but rather using the toolkits that we provide to really just try all kinds of new things in the decentralized space. That's really what I see as the future of Polkadot going forward.
And how do you guys plan to continue innovation and drive the the digital transformation all the time. That we see a lot of blockchain are doing that, but how do you guys always think two steps ahead of other? So how do you plan to continue the innovation in the Polkadot in the future?
Yeah, so we have a lot of very smart people working in the ecosystem. So here at Web3 Foundation, just here we have your research team of about 15 people. All of whom are PhDs, all of whom are looking at current problems and thinking about new ways to do things. We receive a lot of feedback from people in the community. I'm very active in the community. If you look at Bill Laboon or W3F Bill on Reddit, I'm talking to people all the time. I'm getting information and letting people know, ideas. We also have a lot of engineers working on Polkadot. We have the Polkadot forum where they have ideas and post about them. So we get a lot of input, right, from really smart people, and we have decades, I think, worth of ideas that we just haven't. Either you haven't prioritized right now or you just haven't started working on yet. But things like hierarchical relay chains, right? So you can have a parachain that acts as a relay chain to other parachains, right? So you can imagine not just a relay chain with parachains, but just sending that out, right? And then having thousands or maybe even a million blockchains, right? All of which specialize for their specific needs. Like different like zero knowledge voting, right? So right now we have OpenGov, which is very open, it's very democratic, but it's also problematic, right? For instance, I don't know, where you're based in the United States, though. There's no way, or in Switzerland, there's no way for someone to know how I voted, if I voted for Party A or Party B, or for referendum A, yes or no. But you can on the blockchain if you can figure out who owns that account, and that can be problematic, right? You may not want people to know that you voted for an unpopular proposal, for instance. So we've been discussing how can we do this in a zero knowledge way, and how can we make this more fair, right? Because this is another problem with a lot of DAOs out there. If one entity has 90% of tokens, then and you need 50% plus one to pass something, well, it doesn't matter what anyone votes, right? So we've also talked about different we've actually experimented with quadratic voting, and we've looked at identity projects. Like Kilt, one of the parachains, allows for individual identities, decentralized identity services. So yeah, there's lots of different experiments, and I would say how we do this is one, we have a lot of smart people here working on it. As my full title is head of education and grants. So we also give a lot of grants for people that have ideas and want to try it out. So grants.web3.foundation if you're interested in learning more and would like to
I'm
build.
gonna put all of the links down in description,
All
so
right,
don't you worry about it.
thank you. So we give grants out. We've given out over 450 grants to teams working on projects, and these are straight grants. They're just here, fiat currency for you to build a project. We are, a foundation. We're, Web3 Foundation is not a company. We're a foundation. Our goal is to build the decentralized web, and that's what we're trying to do. And the third thing, I think, is just by providing such a big playground with so much power, we're just seeing lots of experiments, right? We're allowing people to build new and interesting things, with Substrate and with Polkadot. And some will work, some won't, right? We know that this is what happens when you experiment. Sometimes it's great and it works out, and sometimes not so great, doesn't work out. But by providing that, that's how we grow, right? Is by allowing lots of people to try things. And for us at Web3 Foundation, providing support, technical, financial, even in some social and moral support, right? Just giving people a chance to talk with our researchers about ideas and interact with us. We have a pretty large grant evaluation team that can also discuss the project and if it makes sense or other projects like it or that you may want to interact with. So yeah, we have a lot of different ways for helping build the ecosystem, but really it's the builders that are doing it.
So it's all about building, right?
It's all about building. Exactly.
Definitely. And Bill, this is some of the your opinion question. I mean, you've been in the industry for a decade, we can say that.
Mhm.
And how did you see the Web3 and decentralization is changing the world in a good way, or how is helping in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole concept, right, of Bitcoin, when it first came out, right, the first modern blockchain, right, was all right. How do we, as a very disparate group of people, right, people in the world, in different countries, and in different socioeconomic classes, different everything, right? How do we come to an agreement on something? How do we come to a consensus, right? That's all a blockchain is, right? It's a consensus on truth. And so in the past, a lot of this consensus was done by a centralized entity, right? And to me, the fact that we have developed a way to do this without a centralized, just using math, really, right? And then evolve that, like that's super useful. That there are so many times, like something has gone wrong with I'm doing something at the bank and I get an error, right? Or I can't send some money. So again, as an American living in Switzerland, I've had to send quite a few international payments. And what's happening behind the scenes? There's a lot of banks that trust each other, right, to send stuff. There are a lot of problems that can occur. And I end up having to talk to like 20 people to figure out what happened. Whereas a blockchain, it's helped me so much that I can, just for me, like just me specifically, right? I can look at, I can see what happened. I know exactly where it went. Um, and so I think what we're seeing is more and more you, this concept of truth, right, being used in the real world. So we saw, you know, um, Polkadot and is uh, currently being used, right, like for supply chain, excuse me, for doing things, like smart contracts, like this ability to have more trust in something, I think allows us to have a much better society. Right. So again, being in Switzerland, it's very interesting, right? There, when you go on the bus, you don't pay, but there's just a sign, right? It's like, hey, this is a self-control area, and if you don't, pay, you can get a fine. And most people go on and like we don't have to spend time, like there's just occasional random checks, but for the most part, people just pay attention to the sign, and because there's just such a level of trust here, right? And I think it's similar with blockchain. What we see is we have that underlying level where we all can have that trust. We have some way of coming to an agreement on what is true, who owes whom what, who owns this piece of property, who did this, who did that. And once we have that, that allows, like, we don't have to focus so much on that. Think how much time is spent in court, right? Just, looking at contracts. And, a smart contract, the computer does it in half a second, right? Instead of arguing it over for 6 months. So I think what we're starting to see, right? And as we move more and more toward this concept of relying on, like, this trustless foundation, is we'll have more time to do things that matter, right? And build better things, and even like focus on art, and focus on philosophy, do what you need to do, because we have this, like, foundational, like, trustless system that we can use as a source of truth. We don't have to spend as much time arguing over this truth.
I mean, you did pretty much great explanation. How can we be better as society if we just trust the blockchain? We don't trust 20 people. We just trust blockchain and immediately.
Exactly.
Definitely, Bill. Unfortunately, we came to the end of our show, and hopefully, we did educate some users about Polkadot blockchain and the real world that you guys are connecting the real and digital world. So, Bill, thank you so much for your time to come on and explaining the Polkadot to everyday users and LBank users and blockchain enthusiasts. So, thank you so much in the name of LBank. Thank you for coming, and please go ahead, plug yourself. Let us know what is next to come and where can people to find.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. First, let me say this has just been an absolute pleasure. Have had a great time. You can tell I get a little bit animated when I talk about this stuff. I do get excited. So yeah. So again, my name is Bill Laboon, head of education and grants at Web3 Foundation. You can find me on Twitter at Bill Laboon, BILLLABOON. Or if you just search Bill Laboon, there aren't many other people with my name out there, so you can probably find me. And if you want to check out Polkadot, polkadot.network can send you links to all the different places that you might want to find out more information from.
Definitely. And for our users, we will plug all the links down in description. So thank you so much for watching our show. This was your host, Muha, and see you next time.